What's going on, everybody? Josh Engleman here for Stokastic.com, back again with the NFL DFS contenders on DraftKings for Week 6. We are moving through this season. Now be sure to hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell so you know when everything goes live. Follow me on Twitter at Josh Engleman. Let me know in the comments section who are your favorite and least favorite plays for this week. And finally, shout out to PrizePicks, presenting sponsor of this video. If you click the link in the description, head on over to PrizePicks, make a deposit. They will match it up to $100. You do not need an optimizer here. We're talking over-unders. You're taking player props, put together 5-on-1 card. You'll net up to 10x your entry fee. Now we're going to talk about my top 10 quarterbacks, running backs, wide receivers, and tight ends. Defense on the screen. Rams in the top spot. Play whatever defense you want, play whichever one fits. That's my recommendation for you here. Who's going to be in the top 5 across all the positions? It's time to find out. We've got a very clear top 2 this week at tight end, but we're going to round out the bottom with David Njoku, Irv Smith, Kyle Pitts, Hayden Hurst, George Kittle, and Pat Freiermuth in at number 5. He's 3,800, projected for 9.5 fantasy points. Pittsburgh, 8.5 point dogs against Tampa Bay, 45.5 point total. He's in the optimal 7% of the time. You're not looking for a huge ceiling. You're just paying down with Freiermuth as either a run back against Tampa or some sort of Pittsburgh Kenny Pickett stack. Similar odds of being in the optimal, but slightly different plays. Travis KELCE in at number 4, 7,800, projected for 17.5. Chiefs are 2.5 point dogs against Buffalo. Can't wait to watch this game. They should put that on Thursday Night Football. Maybe it'll be a little bit better. 54 point total, so we're expecting a ton of scoring. 9% chance that KELCE goes for more than 30. 7% chance, though, that he is in the optimal. That's the same as Freiermuth, the same as Kittle, the same as Hurst. Salary matters here. We all know that Travis KELCE is a better individual play than Pat Freiermuth when we're just talking about regular old fantasy points. But you need to take salary into account. And when you do that, these guys look the same. We start to climb slightly here at number 3 with Zach Ertz. He's 4,900, projected for 12.7 fantasy points. Arizona, 2-point favorites against Seattle, 50 point total. This is a great spot here for Ertz. 2% chance that he goes for 30 plus. So there's a little tiny bit of a ceiling here. 9% likelihood that he's in the optimal. Again, you're just looking to stack him up either as the main part of an Arizona stack or as a bring back against Seattle. But now we step into the 2 primary tight end options for the week. The first one, as usual, Tyler HIGBEE, 4,600, projected for 13.5. The Rams are 10-point favorites here against the Panthers, 41.5 point total. So we're not expecting a ton of scoring, but a lot of that just has to do with the fact that Carolina doesn't seem to do anything. 1% chance for HIGBEE to go for north of 30, nothing crazy, but a 14.5%, we're going to round it up, 15% likelihood to be in the optimal. He's just a lot better at a lower salary than most of the other guys that you can get to. You're just expecting a little bit more volume out of HIGBEE. I'm a little surprised. I expected him to be a little bit more expensive here. He looks really good. He's tied for the top spot. And that number 1 spot goes to Mark Andrews. He is 7K, projected for 19.5 fantasy points. Baltimore, 5.5 point favorites against the Giants, 45 point total. 16% chance that Andrews can go for more than 30. That's what we're talking about. We need that ceiling. 15% chance that he is in the optimal lineup. So Andrews and HIGBEE making up 30% of the optimal odds. Just remember, the most optimal tight end is still 70% of the time not one of those top 2 guys. But the guys that you should be playing the most outside of your stacks, Mark Andrews, Tyler HIGBEE. Wide receiver is impossible this week. There's some value at running back that makes wide receiver just incredibly flat. So we're rounding out the bottom of the top 10 with Justin Jefferson, Deontay Johnson, Romeo Doubs, Rameo? I was going to say that. That's not even a word. Drake London, DK Metcalf, and then Chris Godwin in at number 5. 6,100, projected for 16 fantasy points. Again, the Bucks are 8.5 point favorites here, 45.5 point total. I love that Godwin Freiermuth combo if you're trying to stack this game up. 11% chance for Godwin to go for more than 30, 12% chance for him to just be in the optimal. Anything you see in this top 10 is a completely acceptable play this week. You can mix and match these guys all over the place. A quarter of a fantasy point here, a quarter of a fantasy point there is enough to move these guys from the top to the bottom pretty easily. At number 4, we have the pay-up option. That's $9,700 Cooper Kupp, projected for 24.5. The Rams, as I mentioned before, 10-point favorites, 41.5-point total. You can use him with HIGBEE if you need to, if you're trying to really stack up the Rams. 35.5% chance that he goes for more than 30. You're probably going to need it too. 13% likelihood that he is in the optimal at wideout. It's a monster price tag. There is salary to go around. It's a little bit easier to get to Cooper Kupp this week than it normally is, or at least that's the way that it's looking. But at the same time, to pay off 9,700, you need a very specific game. Slightly different play at number 3 in comparison to Cooper Kupp. That's Rondale Moore, 4,200, projected for 12.5. Going back to Arizona here, we already talked about Zach Ertz. We're going to talk about Moore here. It's just a great environment for scoring. 50.5-point total for the game, and it should be competitive. Close to a 5% chance to go for 30 or more. Obviously, if he does that, you have to have him. 14% likelihood to be in the optimal. He's just incredibly cost-effective at 4,200. It won't take a ton of fantasy points to allow him to be in an optimal. You get north of 20 and you're feeling fantastic. Touchdown here for Rondale Moore, and you are very, very happy with what you got. Another pay-up option here, a little bit more cost-effective than Cooper Kupp. $8,400 Stefon Diggs, projected for 22.3. Again, Buffalo, 2.5-point favorites against Kansas City. You know you want a lot of pieces of this game just by default. Competitive, huge total. We're going to see different spots from this game all over the place. We already saw Travis Kelce. 29% chance that Diggs can go for more than 30. 15% chance that he is just simply in the optimal lineup. If I'm paying up at wide receiver, I kind of want to go to Diggs before I go to Kupp, which is kind of crazy, but that extra salary matters. Finally, we close it out at number 1 with Tyler Lockett. He is 16% optimal. Again, close to Diggs, Moore, Kupp. These guys all look very similar, but 5,600 for Lockett, 17-point fantasy projection, and again, a 50-point total in this game. I really like attacking Seattle and Arizona here, but I don't get the sense that's going to be a minority opinion. 10% chance that Lockett goes for more than 30. That's a big-time ceiling. 16% chance he's in the optimal. In like a combination of things, ceiling, value, game script, I think Tyler Lockett pretty clearly, I can't say pretty clearly because it's 1%, but like all of those things combined make it very easy to fit Tyler Lockett into any sort of lineup construction you're looking for. Much like tight end, running backs got 2 guys that are on a completely different plane this week. Those guys aren't in this bottom section of Jeff Wilson, Jonathan Taylor, Alvin Kamara, Joe Mixon, Leonard Fournette, and Christian McCaffrey in the 5 spot. 8,300 for McCaffrey, projected for 20 fantasy points. Monster dogs. He's going to snap out of it one day and like go for that 35-point game. I don't know if it's against the Rams, but they're going to need him to do that kind of thing if they want to have any shot of beating Los Angeles. 19% chance that he goes for more than 30, 11% chance to be in the optimal. It's a big price tag, and the problem here, it's really easy to pay down at the top. We start to climb a little bit in tiers here. $7,700 Saquon Barkley in at number 4, projected for 20 fantasy points. Again, the Giants are dogs against Baltimore. 45-point total, though. I kind of like the script here for Barkley. 18% chance to go for more than 30. 14% chance to be in the optimal. Might get slept on in this scenario, but I mean, he's very clearly the best Giants piece that you can get to. 7,700 is a completely reasonable price tag. The game total works. They're not massive underdogs, so you expect the game to be relatively competitive. I like Barkley a lot here. In at number 3, we're going to Kenneth Walker, 5,400, projected for 16 fantasy points. Seattle obviously making some changes in the backfield. That is going to benefit Walker here. A lot of more touches to go around. They're dogs, big time scoring. 7% chance to go for more than 30. So you're not going here for like the uber exceptional ceiling. You're going here for a little bit more of the value. That's why you see him get into the optimal 19% of the time. Now that looks great. Walker is fantastic. There are 2 better options from a value perspective. And when I say better, I mean pretty clearly better. And I don't even want to undersell Walker because he's pretty clearly better than everybody else we've talked about. This is the first week we've got some buys and everything now, and this is the first week we're starting to get those lower dollar injury replacements that completely change the way you build your lineups for Sunday. In at number 2 now, we're going to RHAMONDRE Stevenson, 6K, projected for just shy of 20 fantasy points. Pats taking on the Browns. They're 2.5-point dogs, 43.5-point total. I just expect Stevenson to get a ton of work here, and that price tag is perfect for it. 15% chance to go for more than 30, so there is a legitimate ceiling. 25% likelihood that he is an optimal running back this week, a quarter of the time. So well ahead of Walker, blows everybody else out of the water, but still quite a bit away from that number 1 spot. And that number 1 spot is going to Eno Benjamin, 4,600, projected for 16.5. We know what kind of game script and what we're looking for from Arizona and Seattle. Lots of scoring, lots of touches for Benjamin to go around. He should soak up a lot of extra room in this one. 8% likelihood he can go for more than 30. That's actually pretty high in the grand scheme of things for a $4,600 running back, because what that's saying is basically like a 1 in 12 chance, somewhere in that neighborhood, 1 in 12 of going for more than 30. If he just was the running back for 12 straight weeks, like, you'd expect it to happen. That's kind of crazy. If he does that, I mean, it's a no doubt about it. You don't have a chance to win without him, and you don't even need 30. 31% chance that he is optimal at running back. 4,600 is just too easy of a price tag. It allows you to pay up for like the Barkleys and McCaffreys if you want to, the KUPPs and the Diggses at wideout if you need to. No doubt about it, for me, easiest play you can get to this week is Eno Benjamin. Now, before we get to the quarterbacks, one last reminder, please hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and hit the notification bell so you know when everything goes live. Follow me on Twitter at Josh Engleman. Let me know in the comments who are your favorite plays, and then click the link in the description of the video. Head on over to Prize Picks, make a deposit. They will match up to $100. Closing it out with the quarterbacks now, and we know this is just a function of your stacks. These guys are coming along for the ride. Mariota, Cousins, Rodgers, Murray, Jones, and Joe Burrow in at number 5. Bengals 2.5-point favorites against the Saints, 43-point total. You might get a big one out of Burrow. 13% of the time he can do it. 5% of the time he is your optimal quarterback. None of these guys are really in cash consideration. We'll touch on that when we get to number 1. In at number 4, we've got Geno Smith, 5,700, projected for 19 fantasy points. We've talked about Seattle and Arizona ad nauseum in this video. Clearly, a ton of options to go along with Geno Smith. And we just saw Geno Smith be capable of winning a milli. So don't sleep on guys like Geno Smith. 11% chance to go for 30, 5.5% chance to be in the optimal lineup. He looks good, just not as good as 3 other guys. One of those guys is Tom Brady, 6,300, projected for 21.5 fantasy points. Tampa's certainly had a couple options in here. Pat FREIERMUTH was in for Pittsburgh, so that Tampa Bay Brady stack is right there for you if you want it. 17.5% chance to go for more than 30, 6% chance to be in the optimal lineup. Now we get to the final two guys pretty clearly separating from the pack. First one of those guys is Lamar Jackson. He's 8,100 in at number 2, projected for 24 fantasy points. Baltimore, sizable-ish favorites. 5.5 points is no joke. 45-point total. 30% chance of going for north of 30. And the reason that is because he's likely to run for 100 yards and score a touchdown. He's just such a gigantic threat on the ground that it's hard for him to not be at the top of the list every single week. 8% chance to be in the optimal. The only thing that's stopping him from being in that number 1 spot is there's a guy with a slightly better game script that does similar things. And that guy is $8,200 Josh Allen, projected for 28 fantasy points. He goes north of 30 almost 40% of the time. There's just so much scoring here against Kansas City. 54-point total is really the key. Is a threat on the ground, could easily grab some rushing touchdowns. 12% likelihood to be the optimal captain. I think Josh Allen is your cash quarterback this week. He's my number 1 guy. Go to Diggs, go to other pass catchers. It's going to be a pretty fun stack if you can get to Josh Allen. Alrighty, folks, that will do it. Those are my NFL DFS contenders on DraftKings for week 6. FanDuel version is around here somewhere, so check it out. Good luck this weekend. We'll be back again Sunday morning for another edition of the Contenders.